So what we have here is an air rifle that's fairly common in a lot of parts of the world, and yet fairly rare in others. So let's take another look. Welcome back to Canuck Air. Well, what I have here is a Baikal IZH-38, which I'm gathering must have imported into Canada in fairly large numbers in the 1980s. We know it wasn't, this one in particular, it wasn't imported in the 1990s because it's clearly marked made in USSR. Of course, USSR disappeared in 1991. So, yeah, this is a 1980s gun, and must have been marketed as a fairly inexpensive air rifle. I can't imagine they cost too much. Probably fairly heavily subsidized for imports and manufacture and what have you, just to for the Soviet Union to generate some international cash. Now, this gun might look a little bit different than other Baikal guns that are out there because the stock is black, and I have to say that is all my fault. The story in this gun, as far back as I remember, is about 10 years, maybe a dozen years ago. My dad picked this up at a yard sale close to his home, and thought it might make a good starter gun for my son, his grandson, and yeah, I think he made a pretty good choice. Fairly nicely put together gun, plastic trigger guard, 177 caliber, spring piston, not have to worry about buying CO2 cartridges for it, and the plan was to take it up to cottage country and let my son learn a bit of shooting and marksmanship skills. So the trouble was that that was coming up pretty quickly. I didn't have time to do a full service on the gun or address the rather hideous state of the stock. You can probably still see some marks on it here and there. So what I kind of did was a quick and dirty spray paint finish over top, and I thought my son would rather like the black tactical sort of look too, so I don't think I was wrong about that. But, well, time marches on. He certainly had his fun with it, and I want him to have a bit more fun with it in the future, seeing as it is his gun. And I want to try to bring it back to closer to its original finish. So, going to strip off this black and refinish the wood. And one thing I also didn't do was service the mechanism all that much. I think I squirted some grease into the spring, and that was about it. The gun worked. I couldn't complain too much, so there you go. Markings on this gun, we do have a serial number right here. I'm not sure what that means. It's a fairly high number. In Cyrillic lettering, we have IZH-38 marked on the top here. We have the gun's brand, Baikal, here under Made in USSR. And so the gun was originally arrived with its iron sights, which seem to be nicely click adjustable here. Not sure what to do about windage on this. I guess it is dovetailed in there and you could smack it back and forth a wee bit. The front sight is hooded, which is good. You don't scratch your hand up on when cocking it. The barrel is decently long and makes it a bit easier for a youngster to cock it. The length of pull is fairly short on the stock as well. About a year or so after we got it, I decided to purchase a scope for it for my son to kind of have some fun with that as well. And this is just a fairly inexpensive Chinese-made one with an illuminated reticle. It's a 4x32, I think. And yeah, it works fairly well. It doesn't have any parallax correction, but with a 4-power scope, that's really not all that's needed. So we've certainly had our fun with this. It's taken care of a good number of wild tin cans, and part of the fun was having a bit of competition between us, and I'd often shoot with my air pistol, and he'd shoot with this rifle, and the goal was to knock the tin cans further back, further and further, till you couldn't hit him anymore. So, yeah, that was kind of a good gun. So I'm going to get into it and see what I can find out about it, see what condition it's actually in, because I really don't know for sure, although I do know it works, and then clean it up and see how it turns out at the end. So these are all the various pieces of the Baikal now that I've got it all stripped down. You notice I've got all the finish off the stock, or at least as much as I can get. I'll probably work on it a little bit more, but my plan is to stain this a fairly dark, rich red color if I can. So yeah, we'll work on that when we get the chance. As for all the metal bits, they're all in need of a bit of a cleaning. I haven't gone over them too much yet. I'll probably go over them in the ultrasonic bath. The smaller pieces, not that there's many of those. The piston seal is leather, as you'd expect on a gun of this vintage and technology. Not in too bad shape. It has a bit more of a lip on this side than that. But if it's well lubricated, it should be in pretty good shape. You can see there's a bit of a bright spot marked on that side of the piston there. As you may have noticed though, when I was taking this gun apart, this piece was in here and the spring was in there. I'm pretty certain I have not had this gun apart before. I'm pretty certain if I had, there'd be a lot more lubricant on this spring. It's pretty much bone dry. Had it about 10 years, and for a while there it was the only air rifle in the house. But yeah, this spring guide should be here on every other air rifle you find. That's how it works. The piston, the inside of the piston, provides some stability and guidance for the spring on that side, and then on the back end you use a piece that goes up the middle to provide stability and stop the spring from kinking as it's compressed that way. So with that being inside there, this gun was put together backwards. I don't know whether that's accidental, something that happened at the factory, somebody tinkered with it in years after it was manufactured, or if possibly they were doing something on purpose, maybe to meet some sort of compliance. At the time this gun was imported, it would have been required to be under 500 feet per second for the Canadian market. Otherwise you need a firearms license for that, which is kind of ridiculous for a gun of this price point. So who knows, maybe somebody in some effort to make sure that they all went under 500 feet per second instructed the parts to go in backwards, making the piston end of things a bit heavier and maybe just slowing the piston just a little bit. I don't know. I'm inclined to think maybe it was just an accident at the factory or an accident when somebody was putting it back together again. But the spring still seems decently straight. I'll give it a good polish, and we'll lubricate everything thoroughly. Clean out the inside of the piston receiver tube here. Yeah, fairly crudely made in some spots, but again, for the price the gun sold at, it's not so bad. The barrel itself is quite thin and lightweight, but again, not bad. All the linkages here on the two-piece are two-piece cocky linkage are riveted. Yeah, so won't be taking it apart any further there. But the rifling is decently clean and sharp, and it should all work quite nicely again when put back together, and hopefully even better. I'll look up what it chronographed at before, because I did chronograph it about a year or so ago, and once it's back together again, we'll do a comparison and see if anything has changed, mainly if this in the right or wrong order makes a difference. So we'll go from there with it. So here's a closer look at the trigger mechanism of our Baikal here. This is a fairly impressively heavy cast block, which goes in the back of the receiver. Spring goes in there, and the piston glides up and catches on this surface right here, which is pivoted here. Fair enough. But that does mean that this is not a direct sear trigger, as in the trigger is not the part that catches onto the piston, but this is here. So we have a two-stage release, or a single-stage trigger, but it happens in two stages. First, this has to release from here, and then it allows this to pivot that way and let the piston go. This, however, is our anti-bear trap mechanism. This is also pivoted on here, and it wraps around the back of the trigger like that. So with that hooked up like this, trigger locked onto the piston, and this piece right there, pushed down by this little spring here, this will not allow the trigger to be pulled. Trigger can't pull until the barrel closes. When you close the barrel up on the mechanism, it pushes this little mechanism down, allows the trigger to go, pull that, Oops, and your trigger fires. It's not adjustable. There's no adjustments on it for release and what have you. The surfaces here look in pretty good condition, fairly sharp, and that just gives you your release. So yeah, I'll be cleaning that up, lubricating it, put it all back together again. Looks like it'll work fine. Okay, so let's take a closer look at how this is all supposed to work when it's back together again. I have the piston back in the piston tube. Springs all nicely lubricated. Used a light lithium grease on this. I don't want to bog it down with anything with too much damping properties. The trigger mechanism is locked back into the mechanism. That's actually what holds it together. Once the spring this pin is through, this pin is also the center pin for the trigger mechanism. The cocking linkage pushes, of course, like any ordinary spring rifle, pushes the piston back, and this little nub here appears to impinge on this part of the trigger. And when it's a tilting bar, so when it pulls it over, if I can apply some pressure to it, it sets the trigger. And then this little sear surface here grabs the piston. You can't fire it though until, this is anti-bear trap mechanism, until you close the barrel, pulling this back out of the way, and it lifts this little long bar out of position here. Once this is up, it releases the trigger, and if you watch closely here, that snaps out of the way when you pull the trigger. It's a very nice, light, lovely trigger mechanism. Very simple and well thought out. I'm not sure if this is a copy of something else that's been out there. Wouldn't surprise me if it was. A lot of things have been tried, but this is pretty good. So the next step is to put the whole thing back together again. I've finished refinishing the stock. It didn't turn out quite as well as I would have liked, mainly because this isn't as grand a piece of wood as you might like. It's fairly low-grade wood, but it will, but obviously it sufficed for its purpose. Anyway, so let's get it all back together again, and we will test the gun over the chronograph and see how it's behaving now compared to when I tested a couple of years ago. Okay, so I got everything back together again. Gun looks all right. I'm going to try it with some RWS hobbies to start. These are 7-grain on the lighter end for a lead 177 pellet. And then I'm going to follow up with the JSB Exact Diablo, which is 8.44 grains, which makes it almost exactly 20% heavier than these. So just kind of curious to see what 20% heavier pellet gives you the results of. What do you lose in velocity? Do you gain anything or lose anything in foot-pounds of energy? So it's often said that spring guns like to work with lighter pellets when given the choice. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to try 5 of these. Got the chronograph set up and all good to go. So let's see. This gun does have an anti-bear trap mechanism, although I'm trying to make sure I don't close this thing on my fingers. Okay. 454. That's slightly slower than I saw when I was trying the GECO wad cutters, which are slightly heavier, but they seem to be better fit in the barrel maybe. 451. 447. 470. It's up a bit, isn't it? Admittedly, this gun just has had an overhaul, and all the lubricants and parts are all bedding back in again. So a bit of exercise, it may see some changes. And 458, back down a bit again. Okay, so let's try the Exact Diablos. expect them to be a bit slower, but you never know. .447. Tad slower. .446. .451. I must say the trigger pull on this gun is actually quite good. Very crisp. Very predictable. It's not light, but there's a bit of crunchy take up, and then off it goes. .455. .455 again. All right, I'm going to try these Jayco wad cutters here because they appear to be going a little bit faster last time. They weigh a little bit more than the hobbies, about 7.7 grains, I think, last time I weighed a bunch of these. So just out of curiosity, see how they pan out. .464. .464. .462. .463. .465. So this gun is performing pretty consistently, so next thing to do will be to take it out to the range and see how it shoots. So I got set up at the range at 10 meters to start off. Fairly chilly conditions, which doesn't help much. But I just want to make sure that the gun was printing on target all right, and sure enough, it actually was, despite the fact it had been apart, put back together again, sight, scope on, scope off. So yeah, it was shooting pretty well. The Jayco wad cutters were first to be tested, and ended up with about a 17.5 millimeter spread on them at the close range. I think it should have been. This gun should be capable of something a little bit better than that, but it all depends. They find a pellet they like. Here's 3 that went pretty much in the same hole, so yeah, something it has potential. Next we tested was the RWS Hobbies, which were not as good over the chronograph, I don't think, but they did shoot well. We got a 7.5 millimeter group, which was the best one of the day, so that's 11/32 of an inch, so fairly tiny. Again, still not getting that single hole that we're looking for, but again, not bad at all. Then I tried the fancier RWS Meisterkugelns, pretty similar to the Hobbies, really. A millimeter larger on the group, 8.5 millimeters, so 3/8 of an inch. Can't complain too much about that. These ones are pretty much all touching, so that's not bad at all. So I decided to take those Meisterkugelns and back up to 20 yards, and just to see how that affects it. I do find the wad cutters often lose steam a bit in the lower powered rifles at distance, so as to be expected, we end up with a 22.5 millimeter group here, still under an inch though, so it's not terrible. Then I decided to have some fun with the 3 different weights of JSB domed pellets. These are what they call the Exact RS. They are the light one at 7.33 grains. And noticed right away how much higher they were shooting. This shot right here, I pulled it to the right. The trigger went off before I had the sights properly aligned, so that was my fault. But even so, the group was about 30.5 millimeters, so not even quite as good as the wad cutters were doing. Then I moved up to the JSB Exact Express, which are 7.87 grains, and I have to say, in a lot of rifles, these have never been generally the best pellet, with the exception of the Diana 27 seem to like these. Everything else seems to just either prefer the RS a little bit better. Hard to say why, but again, you have to try them to know. Here I got a 22.5 millimeter group, so it wasn't too bad. The heavier dome pellet, the 8.44 grain, again, not sure how well these would do in spring piston rifles, but here I got the group size down to 19.5 millimeters, so again, under an inch at that distance, so I'm not going to complain about that. That'll do. In case you're wondering how the Baikal compares to others, you can see it's about the same size as the Diana 27. The Slavia 630 is definitely a longer gun, and the little Marla made by FEG was considerably smaller. But I've had some fun working with this gun a little bit, cleaning it up better than I should have done. I should have done this better 10 or 12 years ago when I first got the thing, and didn't realize that spring was so dry. Could have sworn I had some grease on there, but obviously it didn't. But with right pellets, it is remarkably consistent in its extreme spreads, and the accuracy of it is pretty good. I had trouble with this scope at the 10 meter distance. It just, yeah, you can see where having a parallax adjustable scope is a good idea on an air rifle if you're going to shoot it up close. Yeah, the bullseye looked a little fuzzy with that, so yeah, yep, parallax adjustable scopes, definitely the way to go for air gunners. But all in all, I can see why this rifle did really well and why people have fond memories of it and why they like it. It looks better now with its a proper stained wood finish on it. So yeah, I'll give it to my son, and hopefully he'll have some fun with it in years to come. Anyway, thanks for watching. Canuck Air will return. I've got some more fun stuff coming. Consider subscribing.